Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Barrett with Espresso Outlet. Today I have this Baratza ESP in front of us. And if you've watched some of my recent videos, I've been doing kind of like a budget conical grinder comparison. So to start with, we have this Turin SK40. I have the Fellow Opus. And now we have this Baratza ESP. So to give you guys a little bit of background, I started out with this SK40. Really kind of liked it out of the box. I got the Fellow Opus out. I've been struggling with it a little bit. I haven't even touched this Baratza ESP. So the other Fellow I've been using quite a bit, and this SK I've been using quite a bit. This I've never even turned on. So we're actually just going to set it up real quick. We did an unboxing. I like to focus on just one grinder at a time. You have this little tray in the front for our dosing cup. I can never figure out which way it goes. It's too similar. Okay, there's our dosing cup. I know on the unboxing video I didn't have my portafilter here, but what is kind of nice about this is you can tell how it doesn't fit this 54 millimeter Breville, but if you peel off this little rubber gasket, it does. So it's made for the 54 Breville as well as your 58 that's more common on your larger machines. So kind of a nice feature. It's definitely loose. It's not the best for 58, but if that is something for you, if you have a Breville, this ESP is kind of a neat grinder in a way. Yet again, I've not done anything with it, so we're just gonna try to dial in an espresso shot. I'm actually gonna use the exact same Mexican beans that I've been using, just to try to keep it as consistent as possible. We're gonna do 18 grams. Try to do about a 30-second shot. This little scoop takes a while, but do like one more. Okay, perfect. Right at 18. And I really don't have a clue where to start on the Fellow. It kind of had a range. The range, at least in my experience, was pretty far off. So the ESP, I'm assuming is espresso. I'm just gonna throw it on 10. This is kind of how I approach grinders. I usually like to go a little bit too fine than too coarse, but I have no idea where this is gonna land. So we have our 18 grams for a dosing cup below. I'd say in a way it's louder than the Fellow Opus, but it doesn't sound so grindy. I don't know. Totally different sound. Seems more powerful. Okay, so definitely first shot is clumpy. It's quite clumpy in there. Where I feel like the Fellow was quite a bit less clumpy than this. Now that was the first time I've even turned this thing on. So it'll probably break in quite a bit. I'm gonna use my WD-T and try to break all those clumps up before we do a dose. Okay, a little bit of puck prep over here. Our portafilter. Let's wipe it dry. And like I said, it fits in the 58 pretty nice. You can just kind of give it a tap. Don't really like that little rubber. Anything with rubber, I feel like the grounds get stuck on it. And not fluffy at all. Neither was the Fellow. Conicals I just really don't find to be that fluffy. Should be using a funnel, I just don't have one here, so. Kind of hard for me. I mean, they are just not fluffy at all. I think we're actually just way too coarse. We're gonna use an auto tamper. Man, it's hard for me to tell. Conicals kind of throw me off. Usually on a flat burr, I can tell if I'm pretty close, but on the conicals, it's a little bit harder for me to tell if I'm pretty close in grind size. So again, this was on setting 10. I have no idea how close we're gonna be on this, but it should give us a pretty good baseline of you need to go finer or you need to go coarser. Honestly, it doesn't look half bad on setting 10 just out of the box. This is total luck. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm a little bit shocked. Okay, so we just pulled that shot, and it was pretty much spot on setting 10 for these beans. Again, it's a step setting, so just like the Fellow, you don't have that much of range. I was right on that setting 10. Let's give it a try. So these are the same beans that I just did. I just did an Opus video, so make sure to go back and watch. I just did an Opus video, and I said it was very sour. I hadn't been very impressed with the pour over. The pour over was just very muted. Didn't care for it. I'm actually pretty surprised with this Baratza. I mean, first shot. I've never even used this grinder before. It's definitely a lot more mellow. I mentioned on my other video that I was using the same beans on this DF83 this morning. So the DF83, it has large flat burrs, and it really brings out a lot of the clarity and a lot of the specific flavors that I'm looking for in coffee. The Opus, it brought out a lot of the sour notes, and I don't know. I really just haven't had a good cup of coffee out of it yet. I'm just putting it out there. Baratza, I've owned Baratzas for quite a few years. It's actually my first real decent grinder. I had the Baratza Espresso. So I was kind of hoping that it'd be similar. I mean, it's half the price of the Espresso, so I wasn't expecting as much. And I really wasn't expecting it to perform very well for espresso. But I might be kind of converted over here. I'd probably do another shot maybe with this SK40 real quick. And I don't think this is dialed in because I was using it on drip the other day. But I want to see if you get a little bit more clarity. I felt like this one has like fairly nice clarity, and this one is pretty close on par with it. I think it's going to differ from day to day and bean to bean, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Let's just do it. Okay, we're going to do the SK. I don't know if it's dialed in. It's on setting about 5 and 2 lines. So a little bit over 5.5, I guess you could say. I will say the build quality on the SK is quite a bit better. The thing that I really like about it is the stepless adjustment, and not having a grinder or using a grinder that has stepped adjustments in quite a while, it's a little bit annoying, and it can be kind of hard to dial in, especially for espresso. If you're just doing drip, you probably won't care so much. But for espresso, having that nice stepped setting, I mean, just giving it the smallest little twist is going to make a huge difference. So let's go ahead and grind. Lost 2 beans. I'd say this is definitely a very quiet grinder. This is, in decibels, they're kind of subjective. This ESP definitely has that like deep bass, bold, rattly deep noise, where this has more of just this nice gearbox motor noise. Sometimes gearboxes, they can sound a little bit whiny, which is like a perceived loudness, but a lot of times they're actually not that loud. The Opus was pretty quiet as well. I'd say this is probably the most elegant sounding. This is probably the least elegant sounding, and the Opus is kind of in the middle. So, really out of the cup, there are just like very small clumps, but they're gonna break up really easy, where this had like huge clumps. Let's do our puck prep. I usually like to use my whisk to break up any clumps just in the cup. If you have a flat burr that's broken, you usually don't have to do this, but it does make a nice pour when you pour those grounds into your portafilter. And we're gonna wipe this portafilter out and dose it. And then let's distribute our grounds. So definitely a lot less clumpy. I feel like the Opus did pretty good job at not being clumpy. The Baratza was definitely the clumpiest. The SK40, it's at least as good as the Opus in terms of clumps. There's just like a couple of small little guys in there. Not a big deal. We're gonna do this auto tamp again. Nice clean tamp, and let's pull our shot. And again, I don't know if this is dialed in quite right. This is about where I've been running it, but we'll see. Probably a tad slow. Still not bad. Nice viscous syrupy shot. Okay, I wasn't really wanting to do any side-by-sides, but just doing the Fellow alone, I felt like something was off just because the flavor was just not there. So today with this Baratza, that was the first time we ground on that, and I'm actually pretty impressed with it. Let's go to the SK. Man. So I've used all three of these back to back. I probably should have done them all. I'll do them all in one video at some point. The Fellow was just very sour, and I don't know. I don't want to dog on it, but I just didn't care for it. I haven't cared for it yet. The Baratza kind of just took a shot out of left field and hoped 10 was right. Just went right in the middle of the ESP range and pulled a pretty nice shot. I'd probably play on either side of setting 10. Today we're on this about 5.5. I would say hands down, this one has so much more flavor than the other two. This one is quite muted in comparison to the SK, but this one has so much more flavor than that Fellow. And they, in my opinion, they were all dialed in the same. I've played with the Fellow quite a bit, and I played with the SK quite a bit, so I about know their ranges. The only one that I don't know that well is this Baratza. It's surprisingly night and day difference to me. So just a little recap, they all have 40 millimeter burrs, all three. And the Baratzas are probably like the least aggressive looking. The Fellows are a little bit more aggressive looking. But very similar, they're both 40 millimeter. This one, the difference between the Baratza and the Fellow is it has an 8-point burr, where these have 6-point. And I guess even taking it one step further, I'll have to get it out. I have the SD40, not the SK40. The SD40 has a 6-point burr. And I would say that the SD40, very reminiscent of this Baratza. And it's not a bad thing at all, don't get me wrong. But the new SD40 uses the same burrs as this. So the old ones have the 6-point, the new ones have the 8-point. And I can tell a huge difference. I'm pretty impressed. For all of them being the same burr size, just the cut geometry on this, just really, it works for me. It might not be what you want, but it works for me. Now, I have used this for drip, and it makes a very good V60. I've used it for Chemex. I still have yet to use it on AeroPress. The Fellow I've done as V60, Chemex, and Espresso as well. Obviously the Baratza, this is the first, I've done one shot through it, so we're gonna do a lot more testing on it, but pretty happy with this one so far. And if you want the bin, you can also pull this little tray out and put your grounds bin in. Now, I bet most people just use this dosing cup. I might be wrong, but even for like your V60, you're probably going to use this for like a pot of coffee. So if you're doing like a large pot of coffee, but if you're doing like a nice V60 or an AeroPress or something like that, this little dosing cup's going to be perfect. And I mean, it's going to fit at the top nice. Didn't quite fit on the inside. I guess you could take the little rubber gasket off, depending on how you dose it. Some people, they put their paper filter in and they dose it from this way. It'd fit that way very nice as well. So, pretty cool. I actually kind of like this little dosing cup quite a bit on the Baratza. I'm really trying to focus on the Baratza in this video. But just to make sure I'm not crazy on just being dialed in, I wanted to compare it against something else just in a video, and I definitely like the SK. Just no bias. I mean, if I did a blind test, maybe I'll have someone, we'll dial them in and do a blind test and see what people think and see what people prefer. But thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you have one of these grinders. Comment below if you want one of these grinders. Comment below if there's something that you want to see or you got a question about. Again, comment below. Thanks.